Here's what I want to know. Have you ever been followed by a goose? Have you ever gone to a park or a lagoon or a lake and come across a flock of Canadian geese, and maybe there's a new hatching of little baby goslings, and the darndest thing begins to happen. The little babies follow you around. You make a little circle, and they follow right behind you. You make a trip to the restroom, they tag right along behind you. Then you turn and you say, "Look, do I look like your mother?" And the little baby gosling says, "Yes, you do!" If it can talk. There's a word that ornithologists give to this. It's a scientific explanation. It's called imprinting, and many animals have this. It's most pronounced, for some reason, in geese, even more so than ducks. That is, that there's an instinct stamped into the mind of this gosling that programs it to follow the first large, shiny thing that it sees. So, if you're lonely, get a goose. You know, in so many ways, we as humans are not all that different. We also, as human beings, are prone and susceptible to that kind of behavior where we follow whatever is big and new and shiny. And when we do that in an inordinate way, when it's over-the-top attachment to something, we have a name for that, and we call it idolatry. And it's been part of the human condition for a long, long time. By way back in the ancient time, the people of Israel, the Hebrews, succumbed to this temptation of idolatry. You remember, no sooner had God brought the ancient Hebrews out of the bondage of slavery and into the new freedom of the Sinai wilderness, no sooner had Moses led the people of Israel across the Red Sea that they gathered at the base of Mount Sinai, and what happened? Did they turn around and give thanks to God for all that God had done for them? Moses went up to the mountain to have a little one-on-one chat with the Almighty. Put Aaron, his lieutenant, in charge. Well, quickly, the ancient people had this great idea. They had a need to attach to themselves to something shiny, and so they decided to melt down all their gold jewelry and make of it a golden calf to which they could worship and frolic and dance before it. Moses came down from the mountain with the 10 Commandments, and that commandment number 2, which is that thou shalt not make any graven image before me. And when Moses saw that the people of Israel had so quickly turned their way from God and were worshiping the golden calf, boy, Moses was ticked. Idolatry. We don't talk a lot about idolatry these days. I mean, we live in a free and secular society, and we allow that people are going to worship who they're going to worship. People turn from the faith, or they turn to paganism or something else, or to nothing. We don't really make much of it, do we? And yet that's not to say that there's not idolatry that's rife in our world today. That is this behavior that we have as humans of attaching ourselves to something big and shiny, something that we're going to revere, something that we're going to emulate, something that we are going to look at as our Savior. Of course, the Holy Trinity has become a cliche, the idols of success and money and power. But the list is endless, really. I mean, you think about it. In our houses, we don't have golden calves in our houses, but we do have something we call a cell phone. And God forbid you should get detached from your cell phone and you know how tied to it you are, to our computers and our technology and our gadgets. And the list goes on and on. Our idolatry when it comes to sports our love for our teams. And when I first came to the Ellen Fieldhouse, I'd never seen anything like it in my life that I came. And there at a decibel screeching level, the cheerleaders are standing on the shoulders of cheerleaders, making a pathway so that the gladiators can enter the Colosseum. And the noise is at decibel-piercing levels as each of our local deities is introduced. And now I've become an idolizer myself. Idolatry. We make idols of our parents, of our children, of our spouses, of people. We idolize leaders, spiritual, religious, political leaders, entertainment leaders. We hang on their every word. We believe that they are a savior at some deep level. Idolatry, it's just everywhere. When you think about it, idolatry. Why, even religion becomes an idolatry. People that fall in love with their church and think that their church, their faith community, is just a little bit lower than God, and somehow have forgotten that the church is made up of human beings, which are flawed and fallible, foibled human beings, and so is the church. Nadia Bowles-Weaver says that we are called not to see the church as a place of perfection, but as a place of practice. And we are again in our society learning the hard way what happens when people idolize the church and believe that it is a vessel for God. As we see our poor brothers and sisters in the Roman Catholic Church in the state of Pennsylvania and other places, and how painful it is when our idols are smashed in the way that they are. So what's the bottom line, folks? What's really at stake here? Well, it's this. We have the human capacity to love, given the gift of love to give human love. The choice really comes down between two things, whether we're going to love God or whether we're going to love ourselves. It really comes down that clearly. Because all those idolatries I mentioned just a few moments ago are in some sense reflections of a love for ourselves as opposed to our love for God. And what the gospel is telling us this morning is that these paths, these false idols that we worship, they will not satisfy the deepest desires of our hearts. They will not give us that abundant life that we seek. And at the end of the day, every one of these idols will let us down. But think about it. Think about these idols and how they let us down. If you idolize beauty, and it will fade. If you idolize your job, it will end. Believe me, I know it. If you idolize your beloved team or your cell phone, I just heard one go up. Your team will lose, and your idol falls. What I want us to focus on this morning is not what it is that we are against, turning away from idols, but I want to focus more poignantly now on what it is that we are for, which is for our love for God and our love for what God loves. Now, friends, this is the hard part. This is the hard part. This is why Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says that the gate is narrow and the road is hard. Why? Because if we follow Jesus, it's not just enough to love God with all our heart, mind, strength, and soul. It is not enough to have a wonderful relationship with God, a mystical experience out in the wilderness, you and God alone, and exercise your private piety. That is not enough. Because the gospel says we must love the Lord our God and love our neighbor as ourselves. When you think about it, even our love for God, even our piety can become an idolatry. When we get all wrapped up in ourselves and our love for God and our meditation and our prayer, and yet we neglect to have compassion towards our neighbor. It is Jesus, friends, who makes that love of God real and brings us down to earth. Jesus in his radical, idol-smashing love. Yes, love our neighbor. So, the lesson that Marilyn read to us this morning is an Old Testament lesson. It's a lesson from a long time ago of a foreigner, an enemy, really, to Israel, a Syrian general named Naaman, who has leprosy. And lo and behold, to the prophet Elisha, he dips himself into the Jordan River 7 times, and he is cleansed of leprosy. Now, it's really scandalous when you think about it. Why? What about all the lepers in Israel? Why weren't they healed? Why was this foreigner receiving God's grace and God's love? It's a radical message. And it was radical when Jesus said it in the synagogue at Nazareth, in his hometown, and he told the people in Nazareth, he reminded them of that story, how God's love and God's mercy goes beyond the bounds of our expectation. And the folks got so angry with him that they sought to throw him over the edge of a cliff. This radical message of who is our neighbor. The story of the Good Samaritan. The Samaritan, the most hated group of all the people in Israel. Who is your neighbor? And it was the Samaritan, was neighbor to the one who fell among robbers and thieves. It's this radical message of who is our neighbor that challenges all of our idols about who we can love and who we want to love. I mean, think about it. Jesus, well, he befriended everybody that we wouldn't like, at least in that day. Befriended tax collectors, befriended people that were unjust, befriended Roman centurions, soldiers of the Roman oppression, befriended them. He even, at the end of the day, befriended his enemies. And from the cross, he said, I forgive them, for they know not what they do. Such a radical message of who it is that we are called to love and who our neighbor is. So radical. I'm indebted to Kathleen Norris, who reminded me and shared with me that wonderful parable in the prayer that we find in Luke chapter 18, verse 11. And she said, it suggests it's one of the most popular idols around today, this prayer. And you remember the prayer, perhaps. It's the prayer where the Pharisee is saying, thank you, God, that I am not like these other schmucks. I'm not like them. I'm not an adulterer. I'm not unjust. I'm not a tax collector. I tithe. I fast twice a week. It's a form of idolatry. And it's not far from us. Sitting in the scrum of the airport waiting to get on a plane, surrounded by the hoi polloi, and I just felt myself on the word of Anna Carvey from Saturday Night Live, just a wee bit superior. Because I had my trout rod and my LL Bean outfit, and I was going someplace really cool. And why are we like this? Why are we like this? Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Our idolatries are insidious and they are deep. And friends, the gospel is calling us to unmask our idolatries, to renounce them, and turn our heart and soul to love God and love who God loves, which is all of us, our neighbor. That is the invitation of the gospel this morning. It is not easy to do. And I want to leave you with one more insidious idolatry that I've left to the end because I worried if I brought it up sooner that you wouldn't listen to anything else I said. And so I'm going to leave it for the very last part of this sermon. And this insidious idolatry is our idolatry when it comes to politics. Listen to this. When our opinions and our loyalties and our convictions and our sureness that we are on the side of right, when our loyalty and allegiance becomes a deal breaker for relationships of truly being able to love our neighbor than ourselves, I am suggesting to you, friends, that is a form of idolatry. Did you know it's astounding the number of people when interviewed to say that they do not want their son or daughter to marry somebody of the opposite political party? Linda Vrek, a political science professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, the Gallup Institute, did the research and found out in 2016, who knows what it is today, 60% of Democrats, 63% of Republicans wanted their son or daughter to marry somebody of their own party. Have we come to the place in our society, my friends, where it's not only that we look at people of different political persuasions and say, I think you're wrong, but now we say, I think you're bad. I think you're a bad person. How far have we come? Are we reaching a point where family members cannot talk to each other? Maybe some of you have a brother or a sister or an aunt or uncle or a cousin or somebody that you know that you have fallen out of favor with because their politics is not shared by you. Has the political situation in our country reached the point where we find it easier to distance ourselves from people that we don't agree with rather than do the hard work of building community with people? Doing the hard work, as Susan Anderson said a few moments ago, of saying, you know what, let's agree to disagree and still be in community. We may dislike the idea that there are people that hold views that are repugnant to us, that have opinions that are abhorrent to us. We might dislike that so much. But can we do that without finding that person repugnant? Can we do that and still see in that other person their humanity and their dignity? So that's the challenge this morning. The challenge is to unmask our idolatries, to renounce them, and to put our heart and soul to loving God. And not just God, but loving who God loves, which is loving our neighbor as ourselves. Amen. And now I invite you to pray with me this short prayer. God, give us your grace. Give us grace and mercy to help us to love you and to love our neighbor as ourselves, even the ones we find so difficult to love. And forgive us, dear Lord, when we fall short, as we so often will.